Hey, what's up guys? This is Oakley and we're going to be playing a 1 versus 1 online multiplayer battle. I am going to be Armenia on this side and my opponent, Alex Stan, is going to be Parthia. So I'm going to start this on pause just so we can go ahead and take a look at the units first and foremost. So I'm going to have two of these Noble Spearmen, one over here and one on that flank, and then two more Persian hoplites in the center, so that's going to be sort of a line of spears there. And then backing that up, I'm going to have two elite Persian archers over on those positions. Then I'm going to have Azat Knights as my general. And in the front, I'm going to position two of my Eastern Cataphract units just to soak up any archer fire and be able to ward off a frontal assault. And then in the back here, I'm going to actually have a Persian Cav, which is still pretty good, even though it's not sort of the best cavalry I can purchase. It's still a very, very good, pretty armored unit. And then two of the Noble Blood Cav on its flank. And then over here, two Horse Archers. And then backing that up with the Mercenary Cappadocian Cav and Persian Cav, and then the Noble Spearman that I already called out to you earlier. So that's going to be my build pushing forward. Then my opponent has brought a build where he has, what is this, there are three Eastern Cataphracts and one Royal Cataphract right there. So that's going to be a lot of armor for me to chew through. At least I do have two of my own Cataphract units, so if you want to sort of trade those off, then I'm going to have more cavalry total. However, he's going to have a lot more in the infantry department. So what he's done is he's brought four of these Parthian foot archers right up the front. So he already outclasses me in terms of infantry, or archers. And then he has, what is this, six of these Parthian swordsmen as his core. And then over on the right flank, he has two mercenary Sarmatian horse archers. So we're going to put this on play, and we're going to see how this starts to stack up against each other. So this battle, my opponent, I'm going to say, played very well, first and foremost, so get ready for that. Anyways, what I'm going to see is he's going to have a huge, heavy left wing over here with a lot of these cataphracts, and I realize that even if I have my horse archers doing a lot of tangoing, I can't take out these horse archers. I'm just going to waste so much of my ammo trying to whittle away that armor that it's just not going to be worth it. So I'm going to pull back these horse archers. I'm going to try and redeploy them on the other side. You can see my opponent is dragging over his Sarmatians over here. So I'm going to pull these horse archers back and pull back this flank because my opponent is too strong. And I figured I'm going to go ahead and push this flank. You can see he's sending all his cav on one side. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take out this side then and try and win in that position and retreat here. I pulled back one Noble Spearman here because I figured the best way to counter these Royal Cataphracts is, yes, they're super beefy and they can probably take most, if not all, of my cavalry. If he gets in the mix with my Spearmen in tight formation like this, he's going to start losing a lot more men. So look at this, I'm pulling back and I'm leaving one guy fully exposed, and that's going to be my Noble Spearman, and that's going to be on intercept duty to keep his guys back. And now this is going to create a very interesting dynamic. Look at this, we have our two armies, him and then me, and then in between in no man's land I've placed one Noble Spearman unit, and what that does is it sort of prevents him from sending his cataphracts through the center, and it's going to create a playing field in the center where we can have both of our skirmishing troops engaged. So you're going to see that start to play out right now. These guys are going to pull back a little bit. I'm going to start pulling back my horse archers who are going to try and go on the other side, and they're going to be pulled back. And now I'm going to be able to start countering his guys. I even have some of my own elite Persian archers positioning themselves up here, and I have some more Persian hoplites to try and guard this flank. But yeah, I'm going to try and hold back his cataphracts by having these stationary Noble Spear units, and then you're going to see my cav sort of attack, retreat, and then my base line of spearmen hold this front here and try and get some more shots off with my horse archers and really just play a lot with his own Sarmatians. Now his guys are actually going to be, I think, cheaper than my own units and actually more effective as well. I was actually surprised. I thought we would be able to trade pretty effectively, but he's actually going to end up getting a lot more cost effectiveness out of his Sarmatians. So you can see we were dueling a lot. I think we have the same range, but yep, he has more missile damage actually, so that's going to start taking its toll. You can see I already did no damage to him in you know, that couple of volleys. I already lost, you know, 13 men, so that's going to be sort of a tick off in my mind saying, okay, I can't win this in terms of skirmishing, so I'm just going to have to buy my time and be super careful and try and win on this flank. However, like I said before, he has more archers than I do, so I'm going to have to find a way to win that. And the way I'm going to do that is by swinging these cavalry forces to the center and then start bringing them over, threatening this flank. And over here I'm going to try and isolate some of his units. So for instance here I'm double targeting some of his Sarmatians, and that's when I start to win. And then because his other Sarmatian is going to try and reinforce that flank, I'm going to force the issue with two of my Persian cav and try and force these guys back, allow me to continue to get some shots off and really isolate his cavalry. These guys got too far off, so this is how I'm going to try and win these types of engagements. But I'm really taking a lot of damage from these Sarmatians. These are probably the most cost-effective horse archer cavalry units, I think, in the game. Yeah, the Sarmatians, they're just super cheap, and they have much better damage than my own horse archers, so I don't quite have parity with his men, and now it's going to trigger his Eastern Cataphracts to get into that fight. But that's okay. These guys are all much more mobile than his Cataphracts, and I'm not intending to pick a fight. I just want to ward off his own Sarmatians and start to, you know, even that the kills over here. And he's going to start returning fire. But my Cappadocians have pretty good armor, and they got just out of range. As his guys are reforming, that's when I'm going to decide to push up and try and engage his guys as they're exposed like this. I'm going to start pushing out my Persian Cav, because what I'm thinking is he doesn't actually have any spears here. So if I can land a cavalry strike on his guys as they're unformed and unbraced, I can get a lot of free kills, and that'll allow me to just come in and crash in with the rest of my forces. However, he's going to start to redeploy, and he's keeping his Cataphracts in a nice position where they can countercharge my guys, so I don't quite want to engage in a frontal assault. I'm going to have my Persian archers here in the woods to get some initial shots off. Then I'm going to start swiveling my guys back over here and push my Azat Knights over to the flank and really threaten his rear because he has no cav. And what that's going to do is force him to pull back some cav over here and allow me to regain a little bit more of an advantage on that flank. So a lot of back and forth, a lot of baiting, and I'm going to realize these guys are a little bit too far in range. If I'm going to push this, nope, actually I'm going to pull back to the woods. I didn't intend for them to go all the way out, and they're going to get back into cover and not take too much damage. That was good. And I do have cavalry units threatened here, so if I do feel like he's getting the advantage in terms of archers, I can just shoot my Azat Knights into here, threaten the flank, force these guys back, and relieve pressure on my archers. So that's something you always have to do, is if you have this type of engagement where you know you're not going to win the archer fight, you have to have some sort of release valve where you can relieve the pressure on those guys. And that's going to be these Azat Knights, these cavalry, who can release the pressure on my archers by threatening the flank. If your opponent decides to push up heavily like this, just go ahead and pull back. Feel free to do that. It's not going to cause you any troubles. Just make sure that you do leave some units to hold the opponent's back. So my elite Persian archers here, for example, tangoing with the Parthian foot archers, that's not a prolonged engagement that I want to be partaking in, but it's something that I will go ahead and entertain for the time being, just as I try and force him back over here and allow my archers in this position to get some additional shots off. And you can see I'm starting to get some advantage there. My guys are drawn out in a thin line, so I'm not taking too much damage. Yeah, he killed 5 of his men, and I actually lost a pretty good amount, so probably not the best exchange, but I think it was worth it to hold back his force. He's going to go ahead and chase me, and that's going to expose him to a cavalry strike. He's not going to be stupid enough to fall for that, but it's going to allow me to, you know, charge him, force him back, and then continue to get some shots off. Over here, I'm continuing to play with his guys, but the tide is slowly turning against my cav. I'm down to 17 and 29. He has a full one here, and then a half-strength guy here, so I do have to continue to force back my opponent with Cappadocians. I'm going to threaten the rear of his guys here, and I figure, you know, just like I was saying before, if he has unformed infantry, oh, that's going to be the best place for me to strike, especially in thin lines like this. So I'm going to charge right through that unit and smush them, smash them. Over here, I tried to threaten his archers. You can see they got into a blob, and I forced them back, but he was able to get a nice strike with his Parthian swordsman. And this is something that was probably a pretty decent move on my opponent. Instead of going for spearmen, he decided to go for a lot of swordsmen, because swordsmen in this case have a lot of these javelins, so they can really counter my cavalry much more effectively. Maybe not more effectively, but in a different way than spearmen would. So for instance, these guys can get a lot of kills from my cav without being in direct contact with them. They can kind of create a buffer zone where I can't get in range without being threatened from his own javelin men, so or his own javelin. So that's an interesting take on that type of engagement. But anyways, I did lose 6 men, but I was able to kill only 11, so that's not much gain from just charging into these guys. I thought it'd be much better, but I guess he did turn around and brace them. Thin line, I figured I would have smushed more of them. If I had Cataphracts over on this flank, I probably would have. But at least it did, you know, force him to reform his line that he had here. I'm going to push up my Persian hoplites and try and force back these Parthian foot archers here, and just start putting the pressure on, continue to get some archer fire, and I want to target his Parthian swordsman. I don't care too much about his archers, to be honest. I want to take out his heavy infantry, because I know if I can take those guys out, then I can start sweeping in and crashing into his forces. Over here he's going to continue to target my noble spearmen, and that's going to be a problem for me, because basically this is all that I have holding down this flank in terms of being able to counter all of these Cataphract units. If he takes these guys out, then I'm going to be at a severe disadvantage when it comes to engaging his Cataphracts, so I have to save those guys. So I'm going to charge in with both my horse archers pretty aggressively, get point blank and try and kill these Sarmatians. I'm backing that up with some Cappadocian cav and whatnot. Now, I was able to bait these guys forward and start to peel apart his formation. As he's doing that, he's going to expose some of the rear of his forces to my Persian cavalry, who were taking some damage from his archers, and it looks like they'll be a little bit in range of his own swordsmen. So here you go, they're going to start cocking their arms for this volley. This is going to be a problem for me, but I figured I had to engage on this flank just to try and destroy these swordsmen on the charge. I'm not quite sure he's going to be braced for this. Let's go ahead and watch. I think he's going to be unbraced. Yep, so they're at 120. So these are the types of engagements you want against Parthian swordsmen. So I was able to pretty heavily damage that unit. Let's see. No, it says only 1 kill, so that's surprising. Actually, very surprising for me. On a charge like that, you figured I would have gotten way more kills on his guys. So I was a little disappointed there. And now he's going to get some rear volleys with his Parthian swordsman, with the javelins, I believe. Yeah, so that's going to be costing me every volley that I get into here, or every charge I get with my own cavalry. I mean, 3 kills for smashing into his guys. It's going to be very problematic for me. At least it did slow them down and allowed me to move back my Persian hoplites into the formation, and I can start warding off this force. And meanwhile, all this disruption has allowed my elite Persian archers to start raking in the kills. I'm almost going to be able to break, and it looks like I did finally break, one of his Parthian foot archers, and now I'm going to be able to target the other one. I won't quite win that, but I'll actually be able to knock out both of those guys, at least remove their influence from the battlefield. And I'm going to start falling back. So I'm going to fall back, leave one of my Persian hoplites, who are not that strong, but if you leave them in square, it's going to take a lot of time for your opponent to kill you, so that's exactly what I want. They're going to be here as a buffer formation, allow me to pull back, and then if he does start to collapse on this, I can just hit him in the flanks and whatnot. And that's why I have some more cavalry back here, ready for some kills. I will say my cavalry did not get quite the killing power that I expected to against some of his Parthian swordsmen. So if you want to look at the aftermath of my double charges against him, basically he lost just what? I mean, really 5, 6 men here and there. Yeah, 4 men with that strike and 9 with that. Even though I got a full-on charge against his guys as they were running, I guess they weren't quite the shock cavalry that I thought they were. I believe these are more melee cav, so they're good in prolonged engagements and not super good on the charge. Again, I really need to bring these cataphracts over to this fight. If I landed those strikes with cataphracts, oh, it would have been way better. And again, we're going to see another one of these into unbraced infantry. And it should be doing a lot of damage, but for some reason it won't. But the reason I can't redeploy these cataphracts over there is because that's the only thing that I can do to face off his own cataphracts on this front. And I'm starting to really lose my horse archers. I'm down to just 29. He's down at about full strength 1, half for the other. So those guys definitely paying for themselves. And I'm just barely hanging on this front. And I'm hoping I can be able to win on this side. Pull some of his eastern cataphracts off and try and isolate them, or maybe even slip in and get his archers. He's not going to fall for that. He's going to fall back to his formation. So I landed that strike, and it looks like that was a little more fruitful. I just got up to 22 kills, but because of all the swordsmen that he has and the fire at will mode, he can just continue to just unleash volleys on my guys. So a very good choice, I would say, with these swordsmen. They held up a lot better in a cavalry engagement than I thought they would, and to very deadly ends, to be honest. I could not crack those guys even in those types of engagements, so I guess what I needed was maybe some of the Armenian Cartly axemen to get in the fight, fix them, and then really attack from the back. But yeah, even Noble Blood Cav, who should be really good cavalry, were not able to crack those formations. So my opponent is definitely playing a very good build. Parthia, I've heard, is one of the strongest factions. The infantry are pretty solid, archers are top-notch, cavalry are very good, and especially I've been seeing a lot of players just field these cataphract units and just keep them in close order next to your guys, and just, deal death with your infantry and your archers, and keep these cataphracts here for a contingency. If your opponent comes in and charges, you can just hold them on the flanks and they will ward off any cavalry strikes, or you can even send them into the infantry fight and they'll do well themselves. So that's something you saw Indie Pride do in a game against me a while back where I played as Carthage, but he had the same type of idea with a lot of the heavy Eastern cataphracts. So now I'm going to bring in my own Eastern cataphracts. I want to be able to wedge and engage his Eastern cataphracts, and I figured, with my Noble Spearmen nearby, I should be able to win that fight. So let's watch some of this as I come in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one of them engaged on this cataphract unit. The other one is going to be, I'm going to disengage and I'm going to hold them here just so I can try and ward off his own cataphracts. And you can see I was able to force them back. So I should be able to get a nice rear strike on his cataphracts. And it's going to be a little hard to tell who is who, but I did get the strike on his guys who were stationary. So I should be able to win that engagement, provided I can get some of my own Noble Spearmen into that fight. So I should be committing them soon. And now look at this. this is the type of engagement that I was saying before, which is where you have Eastern Cataphracts coming into unformed Parthian swordsmen. So let's see the difference. They had 120 before, and let's take a look at what happens after I get this strike on his men. So now you're going to see the mass calculations really get into this fight. What's he down to? 111. So we already got 9 kills, and as I stay in this fight, I'm going to be getting a lot more kills. So cataphract charges are way more beneficial, and I guess that's why I probably should have brought more cataphracts, just to be able to knock out all of these infantry blocks. And he's going to be throwing a lot more of these Parthian swordsmen into the fight, and I'm going to accept that. I'm going to let my cavalry slog it out. And over in this position, I got my Cappadocians on his Eastern Cataphracts. He will probably win that, but I just wanted to tie that down. Persian cavalry are waiting. My noble spearmen are going to be here to try and engage with his royal cataphracts and, you know, tie down this flank. And then maybe I'm keeping these Persian cavalry in reserve to try and engage with his men. I guess I wasn't microing this. I figured these guys, yeah, they should definitely be on hold formation. I don't know why I was charging them. They should have been braced. But yeah, he's going to bowl me over, and I already lost so many men. Oh my god, that's crazy. Yeah, he killed a ton of my guys in that charge. I guess it's because he employed trample at the same time. But yeah, I don't seem to be getting quite as many kills as my opponent when it comes to these cavalry charges. But at least, you know, despite that clear poor move on my part to not brace, I was microing, I believe, over here. It's going to at least allow me to fix his cataphracts, move into the side with the Persian cav, and then engage. But even my own noble spearmen, I mean, they've gotten 0 kills. You'd figured spearmen against cavalry would at least now start to even the fight, but they will in the future. Anyways, now I'm going to commit my noble spearmen into this engagement, and I was able to pull out some of my cataphracts from that fight, or some of my other cavalry from that fight, and intersperse my noble spearmen who are full health into this fight. And then my other Persian cavalry on this flank are going to start to engage his guys who are caught on my blobs. Over on this side, I did engage some Persian hoplites over on this flank to force back his Eastern cataphracts. My opponent still has some reserve blocks of Parthian swordsmen and archers who are continuing to get a lot of kills off. But yeah, here you go. I'm landing a nice rear strike, and this is exactly what you want. Engage Parthian swordsmen, and finally I think I'm going to start getting kills, but these guys are much heavier and harder to kill than I had remembered before, so I was having a lot of issues with those guys. Over on this flank, I'm able to get, you know, spearmen, noble spearmen in the mix against his cataphracts, plus my own Persian cav in this fight, so I should be able to start wearing down his royal cataphracts, especially with his general. That'll be a boon to me. My own Cappadocians are faring not so well. They've only gotten 4 kills and lost 30 against the cataphracts, so you can just see why Parthia is such a strong faction, because of the just killing power and staying power of these cataphracts. I mean, for the price, they do a lot of killing, especially against mercenary Cappadocians. I mean, maybe I don't have the best charge, but I should be good in armor and melee. Yeah, I have higher melee than him. Let's see, I'm at 49 and he's at 40, so I should be getting that. And I have even more higher weapon damage, so I'm not quite sure why I'm losing this engagement. It may have been the charge that just knocked me out early on, and maybe some of the supporting fire. But anyways, now I'm going to be able to thread the gap a little bit with some noble blood cav and finally pursue his archers. I'm going to pull in my Persian hoplites here to try and get his cataphracts. Same with my Azat Knights over here. Try and wrap this up and clean up the rear, and then land some rear strikes onto the infantry blobs over in this position. Continuing to get some more strikes on his Parthian swordsmen. They're showing their steadfastness, however. More cavalry waiting on the wings to be engaged, and now I'm finally able to get in through these gaps and charge into his guys. And you can see in the distance, some of the Eastern cataphracts are finally going to go down because they're engaged against my noble spearmen. I'm going to chase away these archers. If not kill them, then at least keep them from killing my men. His own cataphracts are going to get chased away. So this is a very expensive unit who he would like to have in the fight, but now it can't. So this is a very good move. I'm going to chase them away with my Persian hoplites and then come in. I should be threading these Azat Knights through here and landing some rear strikes because that's definitely what I need to even up these fights. Basically, all in these positions, they're just waiting for the tide to turn one way or the other. Especially over here, I can't hold up that long against these Parthians, and this is exactly where I need a cavalry strike. So I'm going to pull these noble blood cav over here and then try and land some rear strikes. I have not been getting what I want in these types of engagements, so I'm going to continue and just hammer and anvil up and down the line where I can. Over here, I'm going to start, you know, evening up the fight a little bit. It looks like he's down to 46. I'm at 20, so I've stabilized quite a bit. My opponent does, however, have some of these Sarmatian horse archers who I was, you know, fighting off with some of my guys, and they're going to just sacrifice themselves to buy the rest of my army more time. But let's see over here, his cataphracts are still disengaged. I was able to knock out his archers, and now here comes my general. I'm going to get this strike that I was talking about. into the rear of his swordsman. And again, I'm having a lot of issues just knocking out these swordsmen. I don't quite know what it is, what I'm doing wrong. This type of strike should definitely just obliterate these types of swordsmen, especially with Noble Bloodcap. I mean, these are very, very strong troops. They have 34 charge bonus, so maybe not quite as high as a, let's see, what charge bonus? 67. Okay, so yeah, cataphracts have much, much higher, but still, I mean, charge bonus of 34, I should be able to knock out these guys. It definitely, you know, angered the nest of bees, and they're all chasing against me, but that should have knocked out those troops. And so the sturdiness of the Parthian swordsman is what's going to be turning the tide of the battle to my opponent's favor. And let's look at one of these clashes. Cataphracts against my own general unit, and I am going to get, you know, a pretty good exchange on this. Maybe not in terms of the charge, but I think because he was weakened in the battle beforehand. Look, I lost about 8 men right there, and he's, you know, already weakened from the battle I had over here. So that should start to turn in my favor, especially since he's tired and I'm winded. I should be winning that. I'm going to engage more of my remaining Persian cav into this blob, but same thing with my opponent. He's going to get into the rear of my Persian cavalry. So we're sicking everything we can against these, and I hope to take out this general, but at the same time, my general is at risk of failing and dying. My own Persian hoplites are going to be, you know, cleaning up the rear, and I have to really pull them back into the center and try and guard against this Eastern Cataphract unit who's fresh, who still has a lot of killing power, and he's going to make a beeline for this position. My opponent cannot crack these hoplite blocks. However, he was able to win in other parts of the battle. So, for instance, all the cavalry rear strikes that I had here were not enough to crack the Parthians. And my cavalry are now going to disengage. I figured, you know, I just need to commit to winning these cavalry engagements. My hoplites, I believe in them. I think they can hold out for long enough, and I think the deciding factor is going to come down to the cavalry. So that's why I'm going to engage in these fights and really pour in the fire and just try and mop up these types of engagements. Over here, it's just a huge mess, and this is going to be very, very troublesome for me. The uncommitted cataphract unit, that's going to turn the tide over here. So yep, that's going to start. You can see, yep, one of my guys already started losing. He's going to employ fear ability on my guy, and that's a very good move of my opponent to use that general's ability right here, right now. I think that's a good combination because he can just, you know, knock me out with his cataphracts, and then he can come in and basically selectively scare away certain units. So actually my guys did not hold up quite long enough, and now they're going to finally collapse. He threw in more swordsmen against me. These guys are going to be routing. My own archers out here, I should have brought them back in the fight. I didn't realize they rallied, but it wouldn't have been enough. I mean, my opponent still has more guys over here. He's going to crash into my hoplites with some cataphracts, smush those forces, and yeah, he's going to pour in the fire here. So really fun battle, very, very well played on my opponent's part, and I think this is something you guys can learn if you want to, if you're maybe not the best at the game. I think selecting the type of army that my opponent brought and playing it in the way that he played it is going to land you a lot of victories. Parthia is very strong in the latest patch, and this will get you very solid wins, I think, and they can field this army against a lot of various troops. You'll obviously want to tweak it, but this is probably a very good starting point. So let's go ahead and look at the build that he brought. So look at his swordsman here. I'm getting a decent amount of kills, archers a decent amount of kills, and Eastern Cataphracts pretty good. My own guys, you can see I brought a lot of cavalry, and they just didn't get quite enough kills, I think. These guys are rather expensive, and they just couldn't cut it for some reason against his swordsman. I figured they would have, but I guess that's probably why my opponent has brought this very well-tuned and honed build, because he knows that cavalry strikes against these types of infantry is not going to be quite as effective because they have the javelin, they have the armor, and just the sheer numbers of them is going to be able to negate a lot of my cavalry. And also just not having the archer advantage meant he could, you know, sort of dictate the pace of the battle. I tried to confront that and change that and really control the battle back into my hands. But I think with the presence of the cataphracts, he can dominate one wing of the cavalry engagement. The presence of archers, he can dominate the skirmishing component. And with a lot of swordsmen, he can at least have parity with the infantry fight. So a very good build. Hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, see you next time.